Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Monday morning, May 17th. I'm happy to be here. I'm just waking up, having some coffee, and I had a great weekend, and just hung around and didn't do all that much, but it was nice just to kick back and relax for a while. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I have my chat room is open if anybody wants to come and sit in there, and I do have a great friend, and really my sis, my darling sis is in there probably, and she's over in Australia. It's just so awesome. She's usually there, and I just really appreciate it, and I just love to have her there. We're going to be talking today. We're going to continue talking about the issues surrounding child sexual abuse. This is an article I found on the Public Health Agency of Canada's website, and it is called Surviving. It's called Combining Voices: Supporting Paths of Healing in Adult Survivors. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's more of a clinical article, but it's just another resource really for people who have survived, like who are adults who survived child sexual abuse. And, there's so many of us out there, right? There's 1 in 3 girls, and this is pretty much the standard statistics that are out there. They do vary depending on where you go to get your information, but 1 in 3 girls and on average, and 1 in 6 boys will have experienced unwanted sexual touching or sexual abuse under the age of 18. So that means there's an awful lot of us out there, and and there's other people who have experienced sexual abuse. It's not necessarily in childhood, but in their adult lives, right? So it's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. No one deserves that, and so that's why I just want to keep talking about it. It's not a professional show. I don't have any professional counseling certificates, therapist certificates. I'm just a person who pays to do this show because I really believe that we need to start talking about this stuff. It needs to be out in the mainstream public. Abuse, the reason why it's kind of continuing on and is allowed to continue, and any kind of abuses, whether it's abuses in the government, abuses in civil service, it doesn't matter. Abuses anywhere, as long as they're silenced, nobody knows about it, and it can continue on. And so it's the same with child abuse, right? Like child abuse is the same issue. Like, silence is really the problem. As long as people are silent and nobody says anything, and public doesn't stand up and say anything, and the government doesn't stand up and do anything, and it's all silenced, the abusers get to continue doing what they're doing. Children continue to die at the hands of their caregivers and parents, or if they don't die, they just live these horrific lives, right, from the abuse that is being inflicted upon them, right? And so we have to start speaking up. Silence really is the problem. And so I'm not going to stop talking. I decided that, this is what I want to do. And it doesn't make me uncomfortable to talk about abuse. I spent my whole life living with abuse, and so I know what it's like. And so I'm perfectly okay talking about it, but, mainstream society needs to become comfortable talking about abuse, and that's just a fact. For people to really know what's going on out there, they're going to have to start paying attention to what's happening, start checking out some of these, articles in the paper, just start looking to see what is actually going on out there, and then get involved in your local communities. Do something. Really, first of all, it should start in your own home. That's where that should start, protecting your children from this kind of thing. And every parent really owes their children they really owe it to their children to protect them, and that's their job. You don't have children and pop them out and then just send them off on their merry way to make their way through this world. You have to protect your children, up into a certain age, and then it's up to them. But the thing is they need you to do that for them when they're under your care, and it's your responsibility. So I really think people need to start paying attention, waking up and smelling the coffee, and a lot of abuse could be stopped if people would open up their eyes and start looking around for the signs and symptoms of abuse, looking around at who they're letting their children, who they're letting be around their children. You really need to know who's around your child at all times. So there's just so many issues around this whole thing, and that's why I figured I've got nothing better to do with the rest of my life than to start making some noise out here and try to help protect children all around the world, not just North America. And there's a whole bunch of us advocates out there, and there's a whole bunch of people that really do care, and it's all about the children and putting this whole issue on the table out for the whole public to see that this needs to change, it needs to stop, and that's why I'm doing this show. And so I'm just glad to be one more voice to add to theirs, just to get this word out to people and get more awareness, public awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse of all kinds. So I'm so glad you could tune in and be here, and I hope that you get something out of this show. And, if you're a young person under the age of 18, just remember that, this is a lot of adult content on these shows. You want to make sure that you have permission to listen to this show, especially if you're really young, because I don't know where the players are anymore. And so you want to keep yourself safe. There's all kinds of sick, twisted child sexual predators out there. They're everywhere, millions of them, and they will try to get a hold of you. Fear is not a good way to live, and fear will not save you, but education will. So you need to get educated on how to keep yourself safe online. It's so important. You could save your life. You could save your friends' lives, and because all you have to do is start looking in the paper. It's out. This is reality. Children are being kidnapped and assaulted by these child sexual predators. If they're not killed, they have to spend the rest of their lives trying to heal and cope with the issues of being assaulted by a child sexual predator. And I did get some stats from my friend who's actually in the chat room the other day, who I was saying that child sexual predators generally have a certain number of victims, and they did studies and they found that most child sexual predators on average will abuse 100 children, but that's what I said, but it's really more like 120. So each child sexual predator that's out there, and there's millions of them, will on average abuse 120 children. Now, if you're a parent listening to this, do you want one of your children to be one of those 120 children? And if you're a young child out there listening to this show, do you want to be one of those 120 children? No, you don't. So you want to get educated and you want to know how to keep yourself safe, and that's just so important. So we're going to get right on into the show. And everyone listen at your own discretion, please, because I cover every single topic of abuse. That's why I'm doing this show. The topics of abuse are sensitive, and if you think it might bother you, then you need to listen at your own discretion and turn the show off, okay? It's your discretion. You listen at your own discretion and know what's good for you to listen to. I survived child abuse, and so I'm perfectly okay listening to this. I'm way more comfortable now than I was being abused as a child. And so, but some people are just not as far along in their healing, and so that is why it's so important for you to know what you can listen to, right? You have to know that as a survivor of child abuse, you have to know where you are in your healing, how far you've come, and, because you don't want to regress in your healing. You want to move forward at a very slow and steady pace, right? You want to go very slow and steady, and it's just what's comfortable for you. So we're going to talk today about adult survivors of child sexual abuse, care and support for them. And that's, if you think that might bother you, then you want to turn the show off, okay? And so we're going to get right into it. And this is from the Public Health Agency of Canada's website. It's an article called Combining Voices Supporting Paths of Healing in Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. And I wanted to look at Chapter 4. The first few chapters are all just mostly what we were talking about the last few weeks, signs and symptoms, sort of the issues surrounding the whole physical aspects and, that kind of thing, what to look for signs and symptoms and whatnot. But Chapter 4 talks about the care and support of adult survivors. And that's what I wanted to look at, because I've done some looking around at different websites, and like the ASCA has a great Survivor to Thriver workbook. The ASCA is Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program, and that Survivor to Thriver workbook's awesome. And I went over that, and that took weeks and weeks and weeks to go over that on my shows. But you're more than welcome to check that Survivor to Thriver workbook out. It's at www.ascasupport.org. And it's a great workbook for anyone who's survived any child abuse of any kind. And but this article, I just thought it was interesting because it takes another look at what types of treatment and what they've come to learn and know about different kinds of treatments for people, and how things have changed over the years and stuff like that. So I wanted to just take a look at this, and you can bring it up at www.phac-ASPC.gc.ca. CA. Or you can just type into your browser Public Health Agency Canada, look for articles regarding child sexual abuse, and it will probably be right in there. I just found it on the web by looking up adult survivor issues of child abuse, right, of child sexual abuse. And so, we'll just take a look at this article. It says this Chapter 4, the care and support of adult survivors. This chapter outlines some of the paths survivors can take on their journey towards wholeness and types of common healing strategies. I'm just reading right from the page here. Though the contents of this chapter are drawn primarily from the literature on working with women sexually abused in childhood, they apply in large measure to male survivors as well. The possible paths of healing open to survivors are numerous. There is no one right way. In the early years of working with victims and survivors, we tended to follow a medical model that viewed survivors' coping mechanisms or defenses as evidence of pathology requiring treatment. That view is now evolving to include a more person-centered model that lets survivors lead or direct their healing process, define the meaning of their experiences, validates their individual experiences, and focuses on their strengths and coping abilities. Yeah, because they started to realize that everyone is different. They've all gone through different things, and we've all survived different things. No one is the same, and we're all different. That's what makes the world so awesome, right? But then, you can't treat everybody the same way when you're treating people for things, or trying to help people to recover and to survive and cope with from being abused like that. We're all going to be different in our needs, for treatment and whatnot. And then some people say to me, I don't know how you could have come this far, dealing with what you were dealing with and stuff like that. And I think it's my fight to live, really, that keeps me here. Seeing my family destroyed like it was, and so many people have. I read a lot of survivor stories, and because it's so important, because these people, that's their voice, they're telling their story, that's their tears, their blood, their tears, every ounce of their lives are poured out for us to see, and that's the thing, right? It's so important. I do read survivor stories because it's so important to see what, my fellow human beings have been going through, what they went through. And for them to be standing here today is just amazing, you know what I mean? There's so many great survivor stories out there, and there's so many, I know actually a lot of survivors of child abuse of all kinds. And it's so wonderful to see them, having great lives and doing so well with them, with what they've had to work with. And, everybody's in different stages in their healing, right? Just because you're not having this wonderful, great life and everything's just wonderful, and we're all in different stages in our healing process, right? But I look up to those people who have made it and who are there to, to reach out with a hand after they make it, to help pull us along, right? Because those people have been through, we've all been through horrible experiences, right? And life will deal you horrible experiences. It doesn't matter whether you're abused as a child or not. Life will throw things at you that will bring you down, you know what I mean? So we all need to be there to support each other. So important, right? But it's just so awesome to see these survivors out here who are a voice for everybody, right? And they're a voice for me, they're a voice for everybody else, and it really did help me, especially this last winter, to really sort of deal with a few things that I needed to deal with, and just to hear some of their stories and listen to and read some of their stories and to talk to them personally, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's been very helpful, and I think as long as people keep reaching out, and no matter what kind of therapy or healing journey you take, as long as you keep reaching out, you're bound to find something that will work for you. You know what I mean? Because we're all different, right? Like people have said, well, have you ever gone to a therapist? And I've said this in my shows quite a bit, that no, I didn't go to a therapist because I didn't trust therapists. I was brought up to believe that therapists were against us and that the government was against us. My parents were very paranoid. They were very, my dad's schizophrenic, borderline schizophrenic, doesn't trust anything. My mom was manic depressive and did not want people butting into her life and what she was doing and what the whole family was going through. So we were told, that therapists and counselors were just bad and that they would take our information and use it against us, right? My dad always reinforced that. And so we didn't grow up trusting therapists, so none of us went and got any help, And my parents were ordered to go to court-ordered counseling, but they only went twice, and that was it, and then we moved. So we were out of the system, right? So, I didn't trust the system, and I didn't trust anything. So But when I started to reach out, I started to look into online group support with just regular online group support that you can join. So you can join those places. You can join it as an anonymous name. You don't even have to give your real name. And you can talk to people and get help from people who have survived these types of things that may be similar to what you've gone through, right? And it's so helpful because you know that they're there kind of helping, and wishing the best for you, as well as they're trying to continue on in their path and their healing journey. And there's always usually great resources. People usually have great books that they can recommend, things that really will help, coping mechanisms, right? It's so important, right? So it's great, just keep reaching out. That's what I say, we really have to just keep reaching out to find what works for us, right? And professionals, lay therapists, I'm just going to read here, survivors and caregivers of all descriptions may not always agree on what constitutes healing, treatment, or appropriate therapy. However, most will agree on one simple rule: start with individuals, their needs, their life situation, their resources, supports, and own intuitive sense of what they need to find or return to a state of wellness, or wholeness, right? It says caregivers need to keep in mind that for survivors, crossing the boundary of fear and making the decision to reclaim one's life requires extraordinary courage and hope. That's for sure. That is for sure, man. To come out and actually break the silence is one huge thing. It's hard to break the silence, and especially to be to use your real name and to actually go, make it public, right? Because so many times there's still the abusers are still alive, and so it's very hard, for your own personal state of well-being, for safety issues. People quite often will not come out and say anything, because they're just worried about their safety, because abusers are still around, and there's lots of reasons why people don't come forward, right? And also just the whole stigma and the whole, having to be silent for so long. They find it hard to find their voice. So that's kind of what happened to me. And I used to tell certain people, especially if I trusted them, and like friends in over the years, I had a few friends that I actually trusted, and some knew what was going on in my life when I was young. Some people, some people, as an adult, I actually told, and but very few. You know what I mean? Just because I found that people, as soon as I told them anything, they kind of treated me a little bit different, almost pushed me away because they didn't want to deal with somebody who was so damaged. You know what I mean? And so that's just unfortunate. Too bad for them, you know what I mean? Because I've got some wonderful friends. And I've got two friends sitting in the chat room with me right now. Hello, everybody. And so I just love you guys. And it's so good to have you here. And so, I just think, a lot of times survivors don't say anything because, first of all, they're told to keep it silent by family members. My mom used to threaten that, she would kill me if I ever told anybody what was going on in the home. I had to take her serious. I knew she could kill me if she wanted to. I didn't think that she would, but I knew that she could, so it was always in the back of my mind. And, it was a bit of a, there's always that threat, right? Children quite often experience that when they're being abused, not to tell. And also, for child sexual abuse, there's a whole issue where somebody will say, well, this is our game, it's our secret, so don't tell. So, these children, they grow up their whole entire lives not telling a soul, about the abuse, right? And they might tell one person or something, but they don't go get help, right? And that's the sad part, because they keep it it's internalized. They don't get to talk about it. They don't get to have anyone validate the abuse. So that's why, and it's so important, right, to have someone to validate that abuse and to validate your feelings, because we're not crazy, and we're not like, any, some sort of weird creature just because we have these feelings, you know what I mean? I think a lot of times, sometimes people don't even feel human because they think, well, how come I have these feelings and I have such a hard time and other people don't? And the thing is, if you don't talk to people, then you wouldn't realize that people are going through quite a lot of the same situations, same feelings. That's what I found interesting when I started talking to survivors of child abuse who like as adult survivors, in those online support groups. I thought that was so interesting because, they were having a lot of the same feelings I was, and I was having a lot of the same feelings they were. And all of a sudden I started to realize, hey, I'm not alone in this. Like there's like I kind of thought maybe I was just crazy, or I just thought maybe I was just a bad person, or just for feeling those thoughts and having those thoughts and feeling the way that I did, and sometimes I thought, well, I try to say, oh well, it wasn't that bad, you know what I mean, sort of justify the abuse and whatnot, right? And looking back on it, now I'm just like, I can see the whole picture, but it did take me a long time to get where I am today. You know what I mean? Without therapy, I really wish that I would have seen a counselor now. You know what I mean? Just to see where I stood and what I needed as far as therapy went, would have probably been very helpful. But now I'm still thinking I might. You know what I mean? I can't afford to right now, but eventually I don't have any, I don't have any coverage or anything like that. I don't have any insurance or anything like that, so I don't have any money, so I'll have to wait. But I mean, eventually I wouldn't mind getting a therapist and just run through a few things and, talk to them a little bit about self-sabotage. I tend to self-sabotage my life, and sometimes I don't do it on purpose, but it's by the way I was brought up to destroy everything in my life. That's what my parents did. And they just destroyed everything all the time. So we grew up with that, so we just tend to do the same things as the survivors, children of abusive parents, right? So it's hard to not do that. I have to sort of sit back sometimes and think, what am I doing? Am I actually self-sabotaging here? Like I'll quit jobs, I'll do things for reasons motivated because of the fact that I was abused, right? And then I have to stop and think, was that just because I'm angry about the abuse I suffered, or maybe do I need to rethink this whole situation? So it's kind of it's interesting what happens, because sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'll push people away, not realizing that I'm doing it. There's lots of little things like that then I wish that I wouldn't have done that, because I'm like, well, I guess I could have handled it differently, and you know what I mean. Try to learn to grow from this whole thing, right? So it's so hard. But we're still learning, still growing, and I think as long as we're still moving forward and at our own pace, what's comfortable for us, we should be able to make it. I really believe that. I see all these survivors out here who have made it, and they're still going. They're still, they might have their days too. You know what I mean? That they feel down or just feel like they're just having a hard time coping at some point for some reason. But say something might trigger them or something. But the whole issue is that they're doing it. They're making it, right? So I mean, that's awesome, and I just love to see that. And so I think, if they can do it, then I can do it, and if I can do it, then you can do it. So my whole thing is I'm very positive. I'm a very positive person, and I believe that we can do it, and we just have to keep reaching out. That's all, right? It's just so important. And it says, supporting the healing process of survivors requires non-judgmental acceptance of the client as a human being, belief in the survivor's ability to cope and heal, validation of the survivor's abuse experience, respect for personal and client boundaries, keeping a focus on the fact that the client must be in control of the healing process. This would be like for therapists and whatnot. Helping clients to understand that they are not the first person to have gone through this experience. And so, we can look at that on the other end and just remember that we do have control over the healing process. We have to actually be the bigger part of it. And I read that in that Survivor to Thriver workbook, that really it is the best way to go about it, is to be in control of your own healing and to be proactive on it, you know what I mean? And to find a therapist, I think it's really important to find one that specializes in what you've been through. I've heard that on so many websites, seen it on so many websites, and heard that from people, to know what type of therapist or counselor to go and see, because they all specialize. And if you want to find one that does specialize in what happened, whether it's child sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, you name it. They all specialize in different things, and some would know more about one aspect of the abuse than others, and they actually have survivor therapists now who for adults survive, it's just interesting. I guess the best thing to do is check it out, make sure you find the right therapist for what you need, you know what I mean? So you'd have to sit down and do some work and go through some of these type workbook type things, and for your healing journey, and start looking at what you might need for a therapist. And I always say, if you found a therapist that was not working for you, then just change therapists, because you have the right to do that. If you feel you're not getting anywhere, not connecting with that therapist, and they can't understand what you're going through or what you've been through, then you need to change therapists, right? Because there'll be one out there that will be able to work with you. I really believe that, because that's what I'm going to do when I go get a therapist or a counselor, right? I'm going to find one that wants to work with me. You know what I mean? So I think it's important. It says a unique journey. Every person's healing journey is different. The work of healing therapy may require helping survivors move toward and through past experiences to uncover the connections to their current behaviors and feelings. Sometimes it involves dealing with very concrete, present-centered life concerns, such as finding a place to live, work, and other support. Insight therapies may be of use at one point, cognitive behavioral approaches at others. Some survivors are more more action-oriented and concrete in their approach to life and do not respond well initially to insight-oriented work. They might find insight-oriented approaches a little like trying to drive a car forward by looking in the mirror, the rear view mirror, right, looking backwards. Working on their thoughts and feelings in the present or on current life issues may help lead them backwards to decipher the cause or meaning of their actions. The more therapeutic tools caregivers have and the more flexible they are in their approach to their work, the better able they will be able to serve their clients. So, you have to know, like, when you're going through the healing process, on the other end of this, because articles really seems like it's more, it's just to talk about therapists and about the survivors, right? It's sort of just an overall article. It's important to know, that if something's making you uncomfortable in your therapy and it doesn't seem to be working for you, you have every right to change therapists. You know what I mean? I just believe that, because we have to take control of our healing, and that's what I did. 3 years ago, I took the control of the situation, decided that instead of fighting to kill myself, I was going to fight to live. You know what I mean? And that was the very first proactive step that I took, was to sit back and say, okay, enough is enough. I will no longer, try to destroy my life. I will now start to try to fight to live, and that was the first step for me, and that was about 3 years ago, almost to the day, maybe somewhere around there, very close to the day, I would say, or at least this month, right? So, that's that was 3 years is really not that long, but I did a whole lot of work on myself over these 3 years to really allow all the hatred that I had in my heart and the anger and the misery and the pain come out, and let love and compassion, goodness and mercy, light and truth, and everything that I wanted in there, to come in right to my heart, because I was so tired of feeling so bad all the time. You know what I mean? So I had so much hatred in my heart for people, and especially for my parents, and really wanted to end my life. And a lot of people didn't know that; they wouldn't have known that, But I knew that I wouldn't do it. It was just that I had these feelings all the time that I wanted to. And that's a really sad way to live, right? To keep going around thinking, yeah, I should have, or I could have, or I could. Suicide is never the answer. My brother committed suicide. He was 33 years old. He was a cocaine addict, and he took his life when I was 20. He was 33, and I'll never forget what that did to the family, what it did to me. And he's gone. He can never ever heal from his abuse because he's gone. And I would have liked to see him to stick around and get some help and have a good life that he deserved, right, instead of the abusive one that he lived his whole life. And so I say, suicide is never the answer, and we have to keep living and fighting to live. That's the whole thing. Instead of fighting to die, we have to fight to live. So I would hope everybody would join me in this fight to stay alive, and this fight to be well and to have a good life, right? And to hang in there and just make sure that you keep reaching out. If you need to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook, Twitter. I'm just about everywhere. If you want to get a hold of me, send me a message. And honestly, we have to keep looking for that hope. We have to keep looking for the life that we deserved in the first place, right? We have to keep reaching out and just realizing that there is light at the end of this tunnel, and we can do it. We can make it. We just have to keep going, one day, one step at a time. You know what I mean? So I got about a minute left. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Check out our website, http://dreamcatcherforabused.com. There's all kinds of great information on there. It's updated daily. They spend a lot of time working on that website, and you can tell it's a great website, lots of resources and information for survivors as well. And I really love that website. I like to sit there and hang out. I feel very comforting for me. So if you need any information, or if I can help you find any resources or information, let me know. Have a great day, everybody. I'll be back on tonight for Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Donna Shear. Oh no, I'm sorry, Elizabeth Brawley. And then I'll have my own show at 9:30. Child abuse prevention, human rights abuse prevention is up to us. So that's at 9:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And you guys just have a great day. Take care, everybody. I just love you all so much, and I'm keeping you in my heart and keeping you in my prayers. And I just love you all. And thanks for being here, and thanks for being my friend and being in my life. I can't tell you what it means. And I'll try every day. So take care, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.